My name is Ella, and I'm 34 years old. As a software architect who built my career from nothing, I never imagined I'd own a $12 million villa overlooking the Pacific. 6 months ago, I left Chicago after a devastating family fallout that left me completely alone. Not a single call or text from my father or stepmother Marilyn since I moved. Then last week, the security cameras caught something unbelievable. Marilyn walking through my home during an open house tour, her face freezing in shock when she saw my photo on the wall. Before I tell you how my stepmom's jaw dropped when she realized whose house she was touring, drop a comment where you're watching from and hit subscribe if you've ever had family drama too. Trust me, you'll want to hear what happened next. Growing up in a middle-class Chicago suburb, my childhood was pretty normal until I turned 15. My mother, my best friend, my rock, lost her battle with aggressive breast cancer after fighting for 18 months. The day we buried her was the day a part of me died too. I still remember clutching the handmade quilt she'd made me during her better days in treatment, breathing in her lingering scent, and promising I'd make her proud. Dad took Mom's death hard, retreating into himself and his work as an accountant at a mid-sized firm. We barely spoke about our grief. Instead, we moved around each other like ghosts, haunting the same house connected by loss, but unable to comfort each other. Just 8 months after Mom's funeral, 8 months that felt both endless and too short, Dad announced he was getting remarried. Her name was Marilyn Parker, a flashy real estate agent he'd met through a colleague. She had expensive taste and agenda to climb socially in Chicago, and a 16-year-old son named Kevin. She makes me happy again, Ella. Dad said, his eyes lighting up for the first time since Mom died. Don't you want me to be happy? How could I argue with that? But it felt like betrayal. Mom's side of the closet was barely empty before Marilyn's designer clothes took over. The simple, comfortable furniture Mom had carefully chosen disappeared, replaced by Marilyn's sleek, expensive pieces that made our home feel like a showroom rather than a place where people actually lived. Marilyn wasn't actively cruel. That would have been easier to deal with in some ways. Instead, she was dismissive, treating me like an afterthought in what had once been my home. She'd make comments like, "When James and I redo the kitchen," or "Kevin and I were thinking about vacation plans for the three of us." I was becoming invisible. The worst came 3 months after they married. I returned from school to find my bedroom completely transformed. The pale blue walls my mother and I had painted together were now a stark white. My bookshelf had been rearranged by color rather than the careful system I developed, and the handmade quilt, the last thing my mother had made for me, was gone, replaced by an expensive duvet that matched Marilyn's new aesthetic. "Where's my quilt?" I demanded, tears already streaming down my face. "Oh, that old thing." Marilyn waved her hand dismissively. "It was falling apart, honey. I put it in the donation pile. You're almost an adult. Time for a more grown-up room, don't you think?" I tore through the garage until I found it stuffed in a trash bag headed for Goodwill. It wasn't falling apart at all. It just didn't match Marilyn's vision for the house. Dad never stood up for me. When I showed him what Marilyn had done, he just sighed and said, "She was trying to do something nice for you, Ella. Can't you just be grateful Kevin Marilyn's son became the golden child?" When he needed help with homework, Dad would spend hours at the kitchen table with him. When he made the JV basketball team, they threw a party. Meanwhile, my straight A's and position as editor of the school newspaper were met with distracted nods. "Kevin needs more support," Dad explained once when I confronted him about the disparity. "He doesn't have a father figure. You had 16 years with your mother. He didn't have that stability." I learned quickly that my grief didn't matter in our new family configuration. I was expected to be the mature one to understand to make room for others' happiness, while mine was treated as optional. So I poured myself into school and planning my escape, knowing education was my ticket to independence. The quilt incident was just the beginning of feeling erased from my own home. Family photos featuring my mother gradually disappeared from walls and shelves. Holiday traditions we'd cherished were replaced by Marilyn's preferences. Even meals changed. My mom's recipe book vanished from the kitchen drawer where it had always lived. I became a ghost in my childhood home, counting days until I could leave for college and build my own life. One where I wouldn't be an inconvenience to the people who were supposed to love me most. By some miracle, or maybe just sheer determination, I earned a partial scholarship to Northwestern University for computer science. The day the acceptance letter arrived, I ran to show my father hope blooming in my chest that maybe, just maybe, this achievement would make him proud. "That's great, Ella," he said with a quick glance at the letter. "But have you thought about how we're going to afford the rest? Northwestern is expensive." I'd done the math meticulously. "With my scholarship savings from my part-time job and some help from you, I think I can make it work without too many loans." Dad's expression changed. He shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "About that, Marilyn and I have been talking, and we're already committed to helping Kevin with his college fund. He's looking at business schools, and you know how pricey those can be." "But my scholarship only covers part of tuition," I said, my voice small. "Kevin doesn't even graduate for another year." "You're smart, Ella. You'll figure it out," he replied, effectively ending the conversation. Figure it out I did. I took on 3 jobs: barista in the morning, library assistant between classes, and waitress on weekends. I lived on ramen and free coffee, buying textbooks used and selling them immediately after finals. I shared a tiny apartment with 3 other girls to save on rent, often studying in the 24-hour campus library because our place was too crowded and noisy. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. Dark circles became a permanent feature under my eyes as I pushed myself beyond exhaustion, determined to prove I didn't need the support that was so freely given to my stepbrother. Meanwhile, when Kevin got accepted to a less prestigious state school for business, my father and Marilyn covered his full tuition apartment and even gave him spending money. At Thanksgiving that year, Marilyn proudly announced they'd purchased a car for Kevin to come home more often, while I took 3 buses and a train to make the same trip. The contrast was stark and painful, but in my second year, something unexpected happened. Professor Diana Zhang, a brilliant woman who'd pioneered several breakthroughs in software architecture, noticed me falling asleep in her advanced algorithms class. Instead of being angry, she invited me to her office. "You have remarkable talent," she told me after reviewing my assignments. "But you're burning yourself out." "What's going on?" Something about her genuine concern broke through my carefully constructed walls. I told her everything. About my mother, Marilyn, Kevin, the financial struggle. She listened without interruption, offering tissues when I couldn't hold back tears. "I recognize your hunger," she said finally. "I had it too, but you need to be strategic about your energy. Let me help." Professor Zhang became the mentor I desperately needed. She hired me as her research assistant, which paid better than my other jobs combined, and gave me valuable experience. She taught me not just about coding and system architecture, but about navigating a male-dominated industry, about knowing my worth, about setting boundaries. Under her guidance, I developed specialized skills in security architecture, gradually finding my niche. By senior year, I was co-authoring papers with her and presenting at conferences. I graduated with honors despite every obstacle. When I crossed the stage at graduation, I searched the crowd for my family. Dad and Marilyn were there, but arrived late and left immediately after the ceremony. The celebration dinner I'd hoped for never materialized. They had to get back for Kevin's intramural basketball game. "It's just a computer degree," I overheard Marilyn telling a relative on the phone the next day. "Not like it's medicine or law, but at least she's finished." Meanwhile, when Kevin graduated a year later with a mediocre GPA and a business degree, they threw an elaborate party inviting extended family and friends. I received a last-minute text invitation and sat in the corner watching the celebration. I never got feeling like an outsider, as always. I applied to dozens of companies after graduation, facing rejection after rejection in a competitive market. Eventually, I landed a position at a struggling tech startup for much less than I'd hoped to earn. The company had potential but was hemorrhaging money due to inadequate security infrastructure. My apartment was a 400-square-foot studio with a hot plate instead of a proper kitchen in a neighborhood where I didn't feel safe walking after dark. But it was mine, the first space that was truly mine since my mother died. Not once did my father or Marilyn visit that apartment. Not once did they ask how I was really doing. When I called with updates about my job, the conversation quickly turned to Kevin's latest venture or Marilyn's real estate successes. I was on my own, but Professor Zhang's words echoed in my mind. "Your hunger will take you places they can't even imagine." I was determined to prove her right. The struggling startup turned out to be my unexpected launching pad. Within 6 months of joining, I identified critical vulnerabilities in their security system and developed a proprietary solution that not only protected their platform, but could be packaged as a product in itself. "This is revolutionary," my boss said after I demonstrated the system. "You've just saved the company." My innovation caught the attention of venture capitalists who had previously been hesitant about investing. Suddenly, our little startup was being featured in tech publications. My name was attached to a security architecture that industry leaders were calling elegant and forward-thinking. When a major tech company acquired our startup 18 months later, I was promoted to lead their security architecture team, with a salary increase that made me dizzy when I saw the offer letter. For the first time since college began, I could breathe financially. I moved to a safer, larger apartment. I could afford healthy food. I even started a modest investment portfolio on the advice of a financial planner. Despite my growing success, I kept my lifestyle relatively modest. The financial insecurity of my college years had left its mark. I was determined to build a safety net that no one could take away from me. After another successful year leading major security initiatives, I was promoted again to Senior Director of Security Architecture. It was a role typically given to people a decade older than me, with an even more substantial compensation package that included significant stock options. I decided to reach out to my family, hoping that perhaps time and my professional achievements might have softened the dynamics. I invited Dad, Marilyn, and Kevin to dinner at an upscale restaurant to celebrate my promotion. "Well, aren't you moving up in the world?" Marilyn remarked, eyeing the menu prices with raised eyebrows. "I guess all those computer games paid off." "It's not games, Marilyn," I corrected gently. "I design security systems that protect millions of users' data." "Mm-hmm," she murmured, clearly uninterested. "Kevin's been having such a hard time with his business. The economy's just terrible for entrepreneurs right now." Kevin had attempted to start a sports marketing company after college, which had folded within 8 months. He was now on his second venture, some kind of app for fantasy sports that seemed perpetually in development. "I've been working 16-hour days," Kevin complained already on his third glass of expensive wine. "Investors just don't recognize innovation when they see it." Dad patted his shoulder sympathetically. "It takes time, son. You're putting in the groundwork." The conversation continued this way throughout dinner, minimizing my achievements while lamenting Kevin's struggles. As dessert arrived, Marilyn leaned forward with a calculating look. "You know, Ella, since you're doing so well now, have you thought about helping family? Kevin could really use some capital injection for his app. It could be a great investment opportunity for you." I nearly choked on my coffee. "I'm sorry." "Well, family helps family," she continued smoothly. "And it's not like you have other obligations. No husband, no children. Just think about it. You could be part of something really special." What hurt most wasn't the request for money. It was the casual dismissal of my life as somehow less valuable because I wasn't married with children. It was the assumption that my hard-earned success made me an ATM for Kevin's questionable business ventures. "My success wasn't luck," I said quietly. "It was working 3 jobs through college because I didn't have support. It was years of 80-hour weeks. It was sacrifice and determination." "Don't be dramatic, Ella," Marilyn scoffed. "Everyone works hard. Kevin practically lives at his office." The dinner ended awkwardly with promises to think about it that I had no intention of keeping. Driving home, my chest felt tight. By the time I reached my apartment, I could barely breathe. The emergency room doctor diagnosed a panic attack and advised me to reduce stress. "Is there something specific triggering your anxiety?" he asked. "Family," I answered honestly. "Ah," he nodded knowingly. "The most complicated relationship of all." That health scare forced me to reevaluate. For years, I'd been chasing recognition from people who could not or would not give it. I'd been trying to earn love that should have been freely given. The realization was both painful and liberating. I decided to focus on what I could control: my work, my health, and building connections with people who valued me for who I was, not what I could provide. The panic attack subsided as I established clearer boundaries with my family, limiting contact to holiday calls and occasional emails. My career continued to flourish, though few in my family circle seemed to notice or care. I was becoming a respected voice in my field, speaking at conferences and contributing to industry publications. Meanwhile, at family gatherings, I was still treated like the awkward teenager I'd once been. My opinions dismissed, my achievements downplayed. What I didn't realize then was that a breaking point was coming, one that would finally free me from the endless cycle of seeking approval from those determined not to give it. The breaking point came in the form of a once-in-a-lifetime career opportunity and a disastrous Thanksgiving dinner. My company had selected me to lead the development of a groundbreaking AI-enhanced security system, a project with global implications in visibility. Along with this opportunity came a substantial stock options package that, when vested, would make me a multimillionaire on paper. The night before Thanksgiving, as I packed for the trip home to Chicago, my phone rang. It was my father asking unusually specific questions about my finances. "I was just wondering how your retirement planning is going," he said, his tone overly casual. "At your age, you should really be thinking about the future." Something felt off. Dad had never shown interest in my financial planning before. Still, I answered vaguely and changed the subject. The next day, as I walked into my childhood home carrying homemade apple pie, my mother's recipe, I overheard Marilyn in the kitchen. "I know Ella's company is doing that big project," she was saying in a low voice. "James, this could be our chance to finally get Kevin's business properly funded. She has to have money saved up." My father's response was too quiet to hear, but my stomach nodded. I'd been set up. Throughout dinner, the conversation kept circling back to money. Kevin described his third business attempt, a cryptocurrency platform for sports betting, with excessive enthusiasm. "I just need seed capital," he explained, looking directly at me. "About 200,000 should do it. Once it takes off, returns will be astronomical." I focused on my food, uncomfortably aware of the expectant silence around the table. "Ella," Marilyn finally said, "didn't you hear your brother? This is a family opportunity." "Stepbrother," I corrected quietly. "And I don't invest in cryptocurrency ventures." Kevin's face darkened. "Of course not. You've always thought you were too good for family. Miss Perfect with her fancy job and her fancy apartment." "That's not fair," I started, but Marilyn cut me off. "Life isn't fair, Ella. Family supports each other. After everything we've done for you, the least you could do is help Kevin get started." I was genuinely confused. "Everything you've done for me? What exactly do you mean by that?" "We put a roof over your head," Marilyn snapped. "Fed you, supported you." "You mean when I was a minor and my father was legally obligated to care for me?" I asked, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "After which I worked 3 jobs to put myself through college while you paid Kevin's full tuition." "Here we go with the pity party," Kevin muttered. Dad finally spoke up, his voice hard. "Ella, you're being selfish. Family means sacrificing sometimes. Kevin needs this chance." Something inside me, something that had been bending for years without breaking, finally snapped. "Family," I repeated, setting down my fork carefully. "Let me tell you about family from my perspective. Family is coming home to find every trace of your dead mother erased. Family is watching your father skip your college graduation dinner for your stepbrother's basketball game. Family is hearing for years that your achievements don't matter while your stepbrother's failures are just learning experiences." Tears were streaming down my face now, but I couldn't stop. Years of hurt poured out. Family would have been calling to check on me when I was hospitalized with panic attacks last year. Family would be celebrating my successes instead of only contacting me when you want something. That's not family. That's exploitation. Dad's face had turned an alarming shade of red. "That's enough. After everything we've done, this is your gratitude. Don't come back until you remember what family means." In that moment, looking at these 3 people, my father who had chosen emotional abandonment, my stepmother who had systematically pushed me out, and my stepbrother who had been taught to see me as a resource rather than a sister, I made a decision. "I won't be coming back," I said quietly, standing up. "Not until you remember what family means." I left without taking my coat, the November chill, nothing compared to the coldness I'd endured for years. In my hotel room that night, I researched real estate in California. The next morning, I called a recruiter who had been trying to lure me to Silicon Valley for months. 2 weeks later, I accepted a position as chief security architect at a major tech firm in Los Angeles with a relocation package and even more substantial compensation. When I announced my move to California, there was only silence from my family. No calls wishing me well, no offers to help with the transition. Just the echoing emptiness I'd grown accustomed to, but which now, finally, I recognized as freedom rather than loss. January in Malibu is nothing like January in Chicago. As I drove along the Pacific Coast Highway, windows down, and salt air filling my lungs, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: possibility. The weight of family expectation had been so constant that its absence made me feel almost weightless. My new company had arranged temporary housing while I looked for a permanent home. I expected to buy something modest, perhaps a small condo near the office. But when my real estate agent suggested we look at a property just for fun, I found myself standing on a cliff overlooking the ocean, staring at what could only be described as a modern masterpiece of glass and stone. "It's completely out of my price range," I laughed as we walked through soaring rooms filled with light. "Are you sure?" the agent asked. "Your company mentioned your compensation package. Something like this might actually be within reach, especially with current interest rates." That night I did the math. With my new salary bonuses and the stock options from my previous company that had recently vested at a value far higher than anyone predicted, I could actually afford this dream home. A 6-bedroom, 8-bathroom architectural marvel with floor-to-ceiling windows that made the Pacific look like it was part of the living room. Signing the papers for my $12 million villa, paid for entirely with my own earned money, was a surreal experience. The day I got the keys, I walked through empty rooms, imagining the life I would create here, one defined by my choices, not by other people's expectations. I hired an interior designer who understood my vision for a home that was both serene and inspiring. Together, we created spaces that honored my journey. My home office overlooking the ocean featured a wall of built-in bookcases, filled with technical manuals and the science fiction that had inspired my love of technology. The guest rooms, though I hadn't yet made enough friends to fill them, were designed to be welcoming retreats. Most importantly, I commissioned a gallery wall for the main hallway. At its center was a photograph of my mother smiling in the garden she loved. Around it, I arranged framed achievements, my college diploma awards, patent certificates, magazine features about my work. It wasn't vanity, it was affirmation. A visual reminder of how far I'd come, despite not because of my family's support. I also displayed a shadow box containing the carefully restored quilt my mother had made me, the one Marilyn had tried to discard. It now hung protected behind museum-quality glass in my bedroom, where I could see it every day. As weeks turned into months, I settled into California life. I joined a beachside yoga studio, where I gradually made friends. I connected with other tech professionals at industry events. I volunteered teaching coding to underprivileged girls, finding unexpected fulfillment in mentoring young women, the way Professor Zhang had once mentored me. But despite building this new life, there was an absence I couldn't ignore. Not a single call or text from my father since our Thanksgiving confrontation. No birthday card when I turned 34 in March. No response to the careful boundary-setting email I'd sent, explaining that I was open to rebuilding our relationship if he could respect me as an adult. Through distant cousins on my mother's side with whom I'd reconnected, I occasionally heard family news. Marilyn had apparently been telling relatives I was struggling in California and might move back soon. Kevin's cryptocurrency venture had failed like his previous businesses, and now, according to my cousin Lauren, Marilyn had been boasting about an upcoming family trip to California. "She's been showing everyone photos of some celebrity homes in Malibu," Lauren told me during our monthly call, saying they're thinking of investing in property there. "Just wanted to give you a heads up in case they try to surprise you." I thanked her, but dismissed the idea. My address wasn't public information, and they'd made no attempts to contact me. Even Marilyn wouldn't be bold enough to show up unannounced after 6 months of silence. What I didn't anticipate was Marilyn's networking abilities as a real estate agent, or the chain of coincidences that would bring her to my doorstep in the most unexpected way. In early June, I was preparing for an important business trip to Singapore. My company was expanding its Asian security operations, and I would be overseeing the implementation of our protocols across new data centers. It was a 2-week trip that could cement my reputation internationally. Before leaving, I accepted a proposal from an ultra-luxury real estate company that had approached me. They specialized in arranging private tours of exceptional properties for ultra-wealthy international clients and were interested in including my home in their portfolio. Since I'd be away, it seemed like perfect timing to allow a few carefully vetted tours. "We're very discreet," the representative assured me. "All potential viewers are thoroughly screened, and we limit tours to serious buyers in the 15 million plus range." I agreed, signed the paperwork, and flew to Singapore without giving it another thought. My smart home system allowed me to monitor security cameras remotely, but with the time difference and intensive workdays, I rarely checked them. 5 days into my trip, during a rare break between meetings, I decided to check my home security footage. Scrolling through recent activity, I nearly dropped my phone when I saw a familiar figure walking through my front door behind the real estate agent. Marilyn. My stepmother, in her designer dress and excessive jewelry, was touring my home as a potential buyer. The timestamp showed this had happened just hours earlier. I immediately called the real estate company. "How did Marilyn Parker end up on a tour of my home?" I demanded once I got through to the manager. There was a pause, followed by shuffling papers. "Mrs. Parker is a real estate agent from Chicago who joined one of our networked agency tours. She wasn't presented as a buyer, but as a fellow agent looking to make California connections for her high net worth clients." The coincidence seemed too perfect to be accidental, but I couldn't prove Marilyn had engineered the situation. What I could do was watch the security footage to see exactly what happened. The video showed Marilyn entering my home with practiced professional poise, offering critical commentary on the foyer chandelier, a bit ostentatious, and asking pointed questions about the owner. The real estate agent, unaware of any connection, politely deflected personal questions about me. Marilyn moved through my kitchen, ran her fingers over my dining table, peered into my refrigerator when the agent wasn't looking. Her expression was a mixture of envy and calculation as she asked about the purchase price and current market value. Then came the moment I'd been unconsciously waiting for. Marilyn turned the corner into the main hallway and froze, her body going completely still as she faced my gallery wall. The camera caught her expression changing from casual interest to shock as she recognized my mother's photo, then me in various professional shots. "Is something wrong, Mrs. Parker?" the agent asked, noticing her reaction. Marilyn's hand flew to her throat. "The owner of this house, it's Ella Bennett." The agent, now confused, confirmed my identity, adding, "She's quite accomplished in the tech industry. Are you familiar with her work?" "She's my stepdaughter," Marilyn said, her voice faint. What followed was almost comical. Marilyn pulled out her phone and frantically dialed, stepping away from the agent as she hissed into her phone. "James, you won't believe where I am right now. It's Ella. She owns this place. The whole thing about struggling in California was a lie. This house is worth at least 12 million. I watched her wander through my home with new eyes, opening closets, peeking into drawers, when the agent wasn't looking, clearly trying to gather intelligence on my life. She lingered in my office, staring at the awards displayed on my desk. She ran her hand over the bedspread in my master suite. She even took photos when she thought no one was watching. As they completed the tour, I heard the agent mention, "The owner is actually one of the most innovative minds in cybersecurity. There's a feature about her in next month's Tech Innovators magazine." Marilyn's smile was tight as she thanked the agent and left. Within minutes of her departure, my phone began buzzing with notifications. Text messages from Kevin, suddenly friendly after months of silence. "Hey, sis, long time no talk. How's Callie treating you? Mom mentioned she saw your place. Sounds amazing. We should catch up. I have a new business idea I'd love to get your thoughts on." Then, most surprisingly, a call from my father, the first since Thanksgiving. I let it go to voicemail, my hands shaking too much to answer. His message was brief and awkward. "Ella, it's Dad. Marilyn mentioned she ran into information about your home today. Sounds like you're doing well. Call me back when you can." No apology, no acknowledgement of the months of silence. Just the sudden interest that came from discovering I had something they might want access to. I turned off my phone and stared out the hotel window at Singapore's glittering skyline, a strange calm settling over me. For years, I'd craved my family's approval and attention. Now that I had it, for all the wrong reasons, I found I no longer needed it. What I did need was to decide how to handle the inevitable confrontation when I returned home. Because if there was one thing I knew about Marilyn, it was that she would not let this discovery rest. I returned from Singapore to find 3 more voicemails from my father, increasingly urgent text messages from Kevin, and even a formal-looking letter from Marilyn suggesting a family reconciliation at my lovely beach house. Not one message contained an apology or acknowledgement of past behavior. After unpacking and catching up on sleep, I was enjoying my morning coffee on the terrace when my security system alerted me to visitors at the gate. The camera showed my father's rental car with him in the driver's seat, Marilyn beside him, and Kevin in the back. The security guard's voice came through the intercom. "Ms. Bennett, there are people here claiming to be your family. They don't have an appointment. Should I send them away?" I took a deep breath, considering my options. I could refuse to see them, which might feel satisfying in the moment, but would resolve nothing. I could meet them at a neutral location, but that would put them in control of the narrative. Or I could face them on my own territory in the home I had built with my own success. "Let them in," I told the guard, "but please stay visible. If I text you the word done, please come to escort them out." "Understood, Ms. Bennett." I watched through the security cameras as the guard directed them to park and led them up the winding path to my front door. Marilyn was wearing what I recognized as her closing outfit, the designer suit she saved for finalizing expensive property deals. Kevin had attempted business casual but looked uncomfortable. My father, gray and tired, trailed slightly behind them, his expression unreadable. I opened the door before they could ring the bell. "Hello?" I said simply, my voice steady despite my pounding heart. "Ella, darling!" Marilyn exclaimed with artificial warmth, moving as if to embrace me. I stepped back subtly, and she adjusted, patting my arm instead. "Your home is absolutely breathtaking. Why didn't you tell us you were doing so well?" "Please come in," I said, ignoring her question and leading them to the living room where floor-to-ceiling windows framed the Pacific. I'd deliberately chosen this room for our conversation. The view tended to make visitors feel small, and I needed every advantage. "Wow, sis." Kevin whistled immediately, gravitating toward the bar cart. "You're living large. This place must have cost a fortune." "It did," I confirmed, not offering further details. "Please sit down." They arranged themselves on the sectional sofa, Marilyn poised on the edge as if ready to spring into action, Kevin lounging with false casualness. My father perched uncomfortably, his eyes darting around the room rather than meeting mine. "Would anyone like coffee?" I offered, maintaining the politeness my mother had taught me. After serving drinks in the expensive mugs that had been a housewarming gift to myself, I sat across from them in a single chair, a subtle but clear physical statement that I was not part of their unit. "So," I began, "this is an unexpected visit after 6 months of silence. What brings you to California?" Marilyn jumped in before anyone else could speak. "Family, of course. We've missed you terribly, Ella. And when I happened to see your beautiful home during that real estate tour, well, it seemed like fate, a sign that we needed to reconnect." "Happened to see," I repeated, raising an eyebrow. "That's quite a coincidence. The real estate community is smaller than you might think," she replied smoothly. "When I heard about networking opportunities in California, I naturally joined the tour. I had no idea one of the properties would be yours." I let the obvious lie hang in the air, taking a slow sip of my coffee. "Anyway," Marilyn continued, filling the uncomfortable silence, "we thought, wouldn't it be wonderful to spend some time together here? Maybe a week or two. The California sun would do James so much good, and Kevin has connections he'd like to make in the tech industry." She gestured vaguely toward the ocean. "And with all this space, you must get lonely." There it was, the real purpose of their visit. Not reconciliation, not genuine connection, but access to my home, my resources, my professional network. "I appreciate you coming all this way," I said carefully, "but I think we need to address what happened at Thanksgiving before discussing vacation plans." "Ancient history." Kevin waved dismissively. "Everyone says things they don't mean when they're upset." "I meant every word," I said quietly. And in 6 months, not one of you reached out to apologize or even check if I was okay. We thought you needed space, Marilyn said quickly, and we respected that. Did you? I challenged. Or did you simply have no interest in a relationship that didn't benefit you materially? That's unfair, Ella. My father finally spoke, his voice rough. We're family. Are we? I asked, looking directly at him. Because from where I sit, family doesn't treat each other the way you've treated me. Oh, here we go with the victim mentality again, Kevin muttered. I turned to him, my patience wearing thin. Kevin, what's my favorite color? He blinked, confused. What? My favorite book? My best friend's name? Any allergies I might have? The project I've been working on for the past year, I continued. You claim we're family, but you know nothing about me as a person. You're only interested now because of what you see around you. I gestured to the house. Kevin flushed, angry at being exposed. We don't need to play 20 questions to prove we're family. No, I agreed, but you do need to demonstrate care, respect, and genuine interest in each other's well-being, none of which I've received from any of you in years. We've always supported you, Marilyn insisted. When? I challenged. When you erased every trace of my mother from our home, when you dismissed my education and career, when you suggested I owed Kevin financial support because, and I quote, it's not like you have other obligations without a husband or children. The room fell silent. My father stared at the floor, shoulders hunched. Look, I said, softening my tone slightly. I didn't invite this confrontation, but since you're here, we need to be honest with each other. I've spent most of my life trying to earn love and recognition from the three of you. It took moving across the country for me to realize that wasn't my responsibility. My father looked up, his eyes wet. Ella, He stopped, swallowed hard. I've failed you. As a father. After your mother died, I was so lost in my own grief that I couldn't see yours. And then Marilyn came along, and it was easier to focus on her and Kevin than to face the pain of losing your mother every time I looked at you. His admission caught me off guard. It was the most honest he'd been with me since my mother's death. You look so much like her, he continued, his voice breaking. Your determination, your intelligence, it's all Catherine. And I couldn't bear it. So you abandoned me emotionally instead? I asked, my own voice unsteady. Yes, he admitted simply. It was wrong. I know that now. Marilyn shifted uncomfortably beside him. James, you're being too hard on yourself. We all did our best in a difficult situation. I turned to her, seeing clearly for the first time how she had manipulated our family dynamic. Did you, Marilyn? Because from my perspective, you systematically pushed me out of my own home and my father's life. That's ridiculous, she protested, but her eyes darted away. Is it you redecorated to erase my mother? You redirected family resources to Kevin. You constantly undermined my achievements while inflating his. I never. You did, my father interrupted, surprising all of us. You did do those things, Marilyn. I let you because it was easier than dealing with my grief. I convinced myself Ella was strong enough to handle it, that she didn't need me the way Kevin needed a father figure. He looked at me, truly looked at me for the first time in years. I was wrong. I'm sorry, Ella, so sorry. Kevin, sensing the shift in the room, stood up abruptly. This is bullshit. We came here to reconnect, not get attacked. No, Kevin, I said calmly. You came here because you found out I have a $12 million house and thought you could benefit from that discovery. You haven't asked a single question about my life or expressed any genuine interest in reconciliation. His face flushed. You think you're so much better than us now with your fancy house and your big career, but you're just lucky. Right place, right time. It wasn't luck, I said firmly. It was work. Endless grinding work that you've never had to do because everything was handed to you. College tuition, living expenses, business capital, unconditional support. I stood up, needing to physically reclaim my space. I don't think I'm better than you, Kevin. I just finally recognize my own worth. Something in my calm confidence seemed to deflate him. For the first time, I saw uncertainty in his expression as he looked around at the tangible evidence of my success. I didn't come here for revenge, I continued more gently. I could have embarrassed Marilyn with the real estate company for her unprofessional behavior during the tour. I could have exposed how you've been lying to extended family about my circumstances. I didn't. I just want honesty and respect. My father stood crossing to stand beside me. You deserve that and more, he said quietly. I can't undo the past, Ella, but I want to do better going forward if you'll give me that chance. Marilyn, realizing her carefully constructed narrative was crumbling, attempted damage control. We all want that, of course. Family is everything. And now that we understand each other better, perhaps we could start fresh. Maybe that vacation idea. No, I interrupted firmly. There will be no vacation, no extended stays, no financial support for Kevin's ventures. If we're going to rebuild relationships, it has to be based on genuine connection, not what anyone can get from me materially. Of course, Marilyn agreed quickly, though the calculation never left her eyes. I need to be clear about my boundaries, I continued. I'm open to rebuilding a relationship with you, Dad, but it will take time and consistent effort. Kevin, if you're interested in a real sibling relationship, I'm open to that too, but not as a networking opportunity or financial resource. I turned to Marilyn. As for you and me, I think we both know a meaningful relationship may not be possible given our history, but I expect civility and respect. The clarity of my terms seemed to stun them. For so long, I had been the one seeking approval, the one accommodating others' needs at the expense of my own. The role reversal was palpable. Now, I said, checking my watch, I have a video conference in 30 minutes. I appreciate you coming, and I'm glad we had this conversation, but I need to prepare. I texted the security guard done, as agreed, and within moments he appeared at the terrace door. Your visitor's car is ready, Ms. Bennett. As they gathered their things, my father lingered behind the others. Ella, he said quietly, I am proud of you, not because of this house or your career, but because of who you are. Your mother would be proud too. His words, the validation I'd sought for so long, washed over me. But surprisingly, I found I no longer needed them the way I once had. Thank you, Dad, I said sincerely. That means something to me, but I'm proud of myself, and that means more. After they left, I stood on my terrace, watching waves crash against the shore below. The confrontation I dreaded for months was over, and I felt lighter. Not because everything was resolved. It wasn't, and might never be completely, but because I had finally stood in my truth and set boundaries that honored my worth. The next day, I called a therapist recommended by a colleague and scheduled an appointment to process the encounter and my complex family history. I reached out to my mother's sister in Boston, with whom contact had faded after Marilyn entered our lives. I invited friends over for dinner, filling my beautiful home with laughter and genuine connection. My father called a week later just to check in without asking for anything. It was a small step, but a significant one. Kevin sent an awkward but seemingly sincere email apologizing for his entitled behavior. Marilyn sent an expensive vase with a generic note, still missing the point, but at least maintaining the civility I'd requested. I don't know what our family relationship will look like going forward. I'm not naive enough to think one confrontation can undo years of dysfunctional patterns, but I do know that I no longer measure my worth by their validation or approval. My home, this beautiful space I've created for myself, isn't valuable because of its price tag. It's valuable because it represents the life I've built on my own terms. It's a physical manifestation of my journey, from that heartbroken 15-year-old girl clutching her mother's quilt to the confident, successful woman I am today. The greatest wisdom I've gained through this painful journey is that family isn't just about blood or legal ties. It's about who shows up for you consistently, who celebrates your joys and supports you through struggles, who sees your worth, even when you can't see it yourself. Sometimes that includes biological family. Sometimes it doesn't. Building a meaningful life isn't about proving your worth to those who failed to value you. It's about recognizing your own worth and creating connections with those who recognize it too. It's about breaking cycles of conditional love and establishing boundaries that protect your spirit. Most importantly, it's about becoming the person your younger self needed and creating a home within yourself that no one can take away. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family members who only reached out when they wanted something? Or have you discovered that success revealed people's true intentions? Let me know in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please subscribe and share with someone who might need to hear that their worth isn't determined by others' validation. Remember, sometimes the family we choose is more supportive than the family we're born into. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it helps you honor your own worth wherever you are on your journey.